I started to look at the little glimmers around me and realize the paradox of I could still be really feeling uncomfortable, but I also at the same time could enjoy some of the things that I used to enjoy, and that elevated my mood, and I started to feel a little bit better. I couldn't believe it. And so I pulled myself out of that well by these little micro moments. Maybe my daughter came and laid, with me, and had some tea or something, or I was able to sit outside in the sun for a few minutes, or took a shower, which was a major feat, and started to celebrate those little moments.
Hey there, and welcome to Heal with Grace. I'm your host, Grace Decker, and I'm a holistic licensed therapist and nervous system coach who believes that the chronic and often unseen symptoms you're living with are a sign of something deeper going on, a sign that your nervous system needs attention. In each episode, I'll share the science behind the most common chronic health disorders, plus holistic health tips using mental, physical, and spiritual practices. You'll hear what I've learned in my journey and the true stories from our trusted guests, so you can feel less alone in your experience and give yourself grace no matter what you're going through. So without further ado, settle in and get cozy. It's time to heal with Grace. Hi, Ellen. Thank you so much for coming on the Heal with Grace podcast. I'm excited for today's episode.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share.
Yeah, we met because you invited me to be a part of your healing community, which I'll have you talk about a little bit later, but about long COVID, right? And so it was really cool to come in and speak. I love Q&As and answering questions and talking about this work. Obviously, I have a podcast.
And you
Yeah,
did
so
an
that was really
amazing job.
cool. Thank you. And that was really cool for you to have that community together. Community is just like so important with this, right?
Mhm.
So before we go down that road, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and why you're here.
Sure. I'm Ellen Alden, and never thought that I would be in this
Uh,
space, but the universe had other plans. And so in 2021, at Christmas, our whole family came down with COVID, and I did too. But I was like, oh, good. Everybody's getting it together. So we'll all be, okay afterward. And everybody else was, except for myself. I just noticed that there were some lingering things going on. And then months later, there was more symptoms that were coming on one after the other. And I thought, this couldn't be that thing that I've read about called long COVID. No, 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 it just couldn't be. So, I really tried to see if I could get back to the normal activities. I went, cross country skiing again. And I thought, why can't I do this? And I was in bed for a week after and tried just getting back to work. And I was a writer at the time. And just my head wouldn't allow me to think properly, or I kept getting migraines when I'd be on my computer. So it's just like I tried to avoid it as long as I could until I just couldn't anymore. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks,
Yeah.
my life as I knew it. So it was at that point where I just started to begin the health journey with the medical side of things. And that, was interesting because I was shuffled around from, all the different neurologists, a cardiologist, a pulmonologist, an endocrinologist. I went to many different COVID recovery programs. I went all the way down to Mount Sinai, and I live in Boston just to check out theirs. Maybe theirs was a little bit, I thought they could find something, and there was just a lot more battery of tests, a lot more concerning symptoms, tests that could go even further. So I found out I had microclots and, MCAS and small fiber neuropathy and all these things that I really didn't like the sound of. And I wasn't sure, how much, and was even told kind of that they didn't know if I was going to get better. And I believed, took all that in, and just got so fearful. And I didn't know what to do. And the uncertainty of everything and the hopelessness and the victimhood I was in, I was just like, oh, why me? How did I get to be the 10% of the population that seems to be affected? And I was kind of in shame too that I was thinking like, I eat really well. Like I exercise. Like, how did this happen? And I didn't realize that it affects everybody equally. It's an equalizer. But at the time, I didn't tell anybody that this was probable long COVID because I don't know. I wasn't able to really even admit it to myself. So I had to go through all those stages of grief. when it was actually coming out that it was really looking like this thing called long COVID. And so that meant trying to explain to people that there was something that, that was affecting my heart and my brain and why I wasn't showing up for anything. So I started to sort of have to admit to myself that there was a problem. And that was very, very, very hard. And just the acceptance of what was going on and the losses that were happening, missing out on so many things. My tennis team went out without me and I was the captain. I'm like, how can they keep going? And just my work, couldn't work. So, but that kept going. And, the losses, especially with physical things that I used to do, it was really hard because it was also my social. And so the isolation was really starting to creep in. I didn't know what was going on or how to remedy it because the medical system hadn't come up with any pill or cure and kept waiting. I'm like, okay, they came up with a shot in like a year. Like this has got to be, this has got to be something that's coming. But as the time grew on, it wasn't happening. And the fact that even with all the tests, a lot of them were coming back normal. And I just thought, no,
Mm.
it can't be normal. Like, and the doctors are looking at me like I'm crazy because I'm saying that I have all this heart rate and breathlessness, but then they weren't finding anything wrong with my heart or my pulmonary function. So then I was starting to second guess myself, like, is it me or is it just this terrible anxiety or something else going on? Is there a mental health thing that, I need to address too? So it was felt like you're hit from all ends with this. And especially because nobody really understood. And I didn't know anybody with long COVID either. So I just felt really, really alone and confused. But, I had to give up my gym membership, say no to weddings, family gathering, and really tried to do all the exploratory treatments. I thought, okay, I'm going to just get this. I'm going to problem solve. I'm going to find all of these around the world, some of them a little bit on the dangerous side. But I did because I was so desperate. I tried to problem solve my way out of this or do as many experimental treatments as I could. A lot of antivirals, for the spike proteins. I was told I had mitochondria dysfunction, and so I did a lot of tests on that and niacin, all these different ones. But none of them did even move the needle at all on my recovery. So guess I would say that it was a year and a half into these symptoms and these debilitating symptoms, and my mental health is taking a big turn for the worse because I don't see a way out of this or, out of even my bed. And so, in my, the active life I used to have, so it was just really interesting. One night I woke up and I was in a full sweat, and that happened a lot. I had really bad temperature dysregulation. So, like, that wasn't that surprising, or not being able to sleep that much because, not being able to sleep was a huge problem and symptom. But this time there was a lot of hopelessness, which I usually experience, and anxiety. But then there was also this voice that said, you're not doing, maybe your mindset is where you should look at. And I was like, and I don't know
Mm.
if it was, some sort of, I don't know if it was, speaking to me, but it felt like something in my head was just telling me that I might be going about this in
Mm.
a way. So it was that was the point when I woke up the next day that I was like, what if I believe that maybe I can get better instead of every day saying to myself, there's no chance, and I'm hopeless and I'm a
Mhm.
victim. And really was the turning point in my now. It took another year and a half to get fully recovered, but it was a start. Just changing my frame of mind to, there's no hope, there's no way I can get better, to what if I did and what would that look like? So I planted the seed of belief and then, found, oh my gosh, all of a sudden these synchronicities were happening now. Someone gave me the Mind Body Prescription by John Sarno. I started reading The Way Out. I started following, Raylan's channel. If I had known about you, I would have followed you, but I didn't. And then I saw, oh my gosh, people are recovering. There's a few people. And then I thought, they're in my world, and a world I never thought I'd be in. And everything kept snowballing to the point where I started to feel like if I follow this pain reprocessing therapy stuff, if I keep believing that, visualizing that I can get better. You see it in the athletes all the time right now with the Olympics,
Yeah.
that maybe I can, follow this path to a way out. And to use Alan Gordon's words, and I did slowly but surely kept
Mm.
looking at how I was responding to things. Oh, one thing also that helped is that I had just completed a MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction program. And so thank goodness I had some tools to emotionally regulate, because I had no idea how much my nervous system was involved with this whole thing. I didn't even know I was in fight or flight 24/7. I just thought that was my standard. Like what I ran on. And it turns out it kind of was before that I realized all of this. So bringing that back down to a baseline and, bringing my body back to safety instead of that alarm that was on saying, oh no, you're in really big trouble. And instead saying, you're going to be okay. That this symptom can be here and it can be safe. Once I realized that really what the doctors were saying about, I used to get so mad when the doctors would say, there's nothing wrong in the scans. And I was like, you're gonna let me go back on the streets, with these symptoms? And it turns out that I was so grateful that there was nothing else going on in my, a secondary problem, that it was my nervous system and brain working together. So all my symptoms were real that I was feeling and experiencing, and they were very, very difficult. It's just that they weren't caused by a structural issue. They were caused by, a pain fear cycle that I'd gotten myself into, and I really needed to learn that my cure was not going to come externally. I wanted it to. I wanted someone to hand me the golden pill, but actually, it took time of me settling myself, getting my nervous system regulated, really working with my brain in what I could do to kind of rewire it to safety instead of constant fear. So that's pretty much how this all happened.
That night is fascinating. That turn on of, wait, maybe I'm missing something. I love that. That's really interesting. Obviously, there was something within you that was is really called to do this or heal in that way, but then also come at it and do this work that you're doing. I mean, that was a lot of us go through it. And now we can say, wow, we learned so much and actually can be grateful for the journey, but it takes some time to get there. Right.
Mhm.
Kind of see that trajectory for you. I want to back up a little bit into what you were told. I think it's important for people to resonate with this. Like, what were you actually told, or were you told what was wrong?
Yeah, I was told that there were structural issues. I mean, in 2021, I was told that the virus was hiding somewhere in my
Mm,
body. They just couldn't find it. Like, it was either in my stomach, in the gut lining, maybe in my brain, which was scary. I'm like, "Oh, I have virus in my brain." And,
mhm,
or somewhere else where I'm like, "Well, then where does it hide? And I don't understand why your antivirals aren't finding it?" And I just kept asking questions after they would tell me that was what it was. The gut lining, it kind of made sense. Things can get trapped in there. So I thought, okay. And I did a whole overhaul of that, changed my diet, went on all these anti inflammatory diets. Of course, I was told it was a systemic inflammation. Sure did feel like it. Had pain from head to toe. I mean, I felt like the tin man who needed oil every morning. It was just so hard. And but what really helped me with that was actually movement, because I was just like, I can't do anything. The doctors told me that
mhm.
it's to rest and to, not move. Meanwhile, what I've learned so much is that our body needs energy to move. We need to get the circulation going, the things with the vagus nerve and lymphatic drainage. So, but I was told, yes, that the best thing to do was to sit and lay down and rest, rest, rest as much as I could, because I had to conserve remember they would talk a lot about the energy envelope, which I still, think is important, but it was very extreme. Don't go exercise. Don't go to see a PT. This is the 2021. It got a little changed over that. And then I did do that. And it was gone on the other side because I did too much. But at the
Mm.
time, yeah, try not to do as much. And, and there's a chance that all my organs are being destroyed. And that was really scary to hear that, because I'm like, I said, from the inside out. And they're like, yeah. So these are, the different doctors and professionals. And I believed them because I always believed my doctors.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary. That's really scary to hear those
Sure.
things. And to also to hear you talk about yourself being really negative and in a victim place, it's interesting because I do not see that energy about you now. Obviously, you've done a lot of work, but can you share that transition from the victim place, the hopelessness to where you are now?
Yeah, that was the hardest part of any symptom I had in this whole illness syndrome, whatever you want to call it, condition, was I never experienced depressive thoughts like I did with this, mainly because I felt like I had zero control over what was happening. I felt like I was being told, I had this thing with no end, and I just saw my future is completely bleak. I've got 3 children and I couldn't show up for them the way I used to, and I was kinda like the athlete in the family, and so we had so much fun, and to see me lying there, it just over my work, and then I felt like somebody who was not even productive in society, so it made me feel so badly that what was I there for? Just to lie in bed, it just there were so many things that caused depression that I never felt like I was in a well at the bottom and I could not climb my way out. That's how I felt. And then I learned, a lot more. Once I could finally read again, because I couldn't read for a good 9 months, read or write. And I'm a writer. I couldn't even read my own books. So it was just like, what is happening? There was so much cognitive dysfunction. And at the time, you're saying, what did they say? They said that could be permanent too. And I was just like, I'm a writer. And so it was like my whole livelihood was, and so, but then we're wrong. Things were starting to come back. I went to speech, I went to cognitive therapy, and I started to chunk and learn all over again how to do that. And it all,
Mm,
thank goodness, came back, plus calming the nervous system so that my prefrontal cortex wasn't offline all the time. So I could actually focus, take in things better, But you're saying, well, like when I started to realize that maybe I was going about this the wrong way and read more about neuroscience, I was
mm,
realizing that what I was constantly focusing on, which was despair, which was not being able to get better, which was on, being in this really sad place, that is what I kept getting. I mean, I kept getting more, hopeless things that would happen, another bad test or another doctor that disappointed me, or, one that said maybe it's just anxiety or something like that. And it was when I started to plant that seed of belief that maybe I could get better that I started seeing little bits. And, I'd even see like a bird outside and I'd be like, okay, that's kind of beautiful. Whereas before I was just like, a bird, what are you doing in my presence when I'm so upset? Like, how are you even flying right now? And so I started to look at the little glimmers around me and realize the paradox of I could still be really feeling uncomfortable, but I also at the same time could enjoy some of the things that I used to enjoy. And that elevated my mood and I started to feel a little bit better. I couldn't believe it, and so I pulled myself out of that well by these little micro moments. Maybe my daughter came and laid, with me, and had some tea or something, or, I was able to sit outside in the sun for a few minutes or took a shower, which was a major feat, and started to celebrate those little moments. And when I saw even micro, which I honestly think a slug improves faster than and it seemed like this I did in recovery. But when I saw a little bit, or if someone would come and say, I see that you have just a little more vitality, I
mm.
had hope just brought me to the next. And then I did also when I was in my bed, not able to do anything. When I had that little mindset shift, I brought in visualization like crazy. It didn't matter if I could not get up that day except to go to the bathroom and back. I would visualize myself on my mountain bike again, having the best time, or skiing, or playing tennis again, or going for a mountain hike and just vividly imagine what it smelled like, what it felt like, what I was seeing,
Mhm.
and gave me so much of this. If you think about it, with hormones, that was like the dopamine I needed, or the serotonin, the hugs were the oxytocin. And so all of those were was really changing my biochemistry. And those are the things I realized, oh my gosh, you can do for yourself. You
Mm.
can self heal by changing your mindset, letting in those good hormones instead of the stress hormones that I was constantly. I can change my thoughts a little bit. And I'm not saying toxic positivity either. It was just a tiny little switching of the station. Like if this is a radio and I was on the worry station, once I noticed that, I'd be like, okay, yep, there I am. Like, and that makes sense for what I'm going through. But what happens if I change this to a lighter station? Maybe there's just, or maybe soft jazz, you know, something that was just a little bit less, terrifying and just more helpful to my recovery and to my nervous system.
Yeah. I mean, as we know, and as I talk about this, you talk about this, sometimes mindset shifting, sometimes that term can get a little like roll your eyes, like how much is mindset really going to do? But those shifts that you just talked about, that is the brain training. Sometimes people also think brain training is like this complicated thing you have to figure out how to do. It's exactly what you just talked about. You're retraining those neural pathways that brought you into the chronic state of stress in your body and out of it. So I love that trajectory, especially that you really named in the beginning. I was in complete victim mode, hopelessness mode, and realized that was actually making me more sick. So
Yeah.
those were the
And can
little
I
things.
just say that when I also got COVID, that you're right, my nervous system was already at a max. And so I
I
just
wanted
wanted
to
to
ask
say
you
that.
about before.
Yes. And, just even growing up, IBS before playing sports, bad stomach, didn't even know that the mind and body were together. I just thought I
Mm,
had a stomach. My mother was always taking me to the doctor for a bad, stomach, or if there was a big test
mhm.
coming up, really bad stomach. Sometimes got dizzy with a test because I didn't think I was smart enough, didn't think I could do this. So I didn't realize again the mind body connection. I wish I had. And I wish someone had told me. And then in college, I got TMJ, which again, it's like that clenching of your jaw. And I know now that it was because, again, I didn't feel as though I probably, that I was good enough to be, or smart enough or worthy enough to be in college, and didn't have enough self-confidence that I could do it. So my body instead, really was trying to protect me from those feelings, which were, a very sad feeling when you think about it, and it turned out to be a limiting belief. But yeah, that, that it was there. So I had these things building up, I think, in me. And I realized I had like a lot of the people in the mind body world, even Dr. Shubin or Dr. Clark, they all say they had some things that were building before. And then it's really interesting because a lot of people ask, like, well, what was different about this virus than some of the other ones? And why is this not such a, and I'm not exactly sure what the answer to that is. I know that it hit my system hard and I was already in a place. I mean, Christmas time's already like, I think the highest stress time of the year. And then I was, yeah, hosting a lot of people and there was just some things, anxiety going on. Oh my gosh, what am I saying? It was the pandemic. It was only 2021. So it was a full year. The mortality rate was just going and going. And, that was the whole thing, I think, was probably the difference between a lot of the other things that, other type of flus that have happened. This shut down the world. This we all saw published, on every news station. We couldn't even see our neighbors. We couldn't get food, So I think that that's what added to the fear. And when I got it, it was like, and so I think that kept the alarm. When plus I know I had those circuits already kind of ready for that. So yeah, so I was kind of like a pot or a tea kettle ready to go over, explode.
So you mentioned having from when you got COVID about a year and a half till you found mind body work, till you started to
Yes,
shift. Is that right? Okay.
yes,
What did that recovery till today, like, what did that look like for you? What is that timeline, and how do you call
yeah.
yourself recovered, essentially?
Oh, recovery is such an interesting word too, and I'm sure
I know.
you feel the same way I do. I'm recovered from chronic symptoms
Mhm.
and chronic anxiety, all this stuff. But there might be something that hits because it's never going to end. The stressors in our lives, and so because I'm already so sensitive to the mind body work, that the things I can still feel a symptom coming on. The difference is I'm like, there it is, and oftentimes I'll look right away of where's the pattern behind it. Where's an old pattern coming in, and where's the emotion underneath that. I'll start to look at the emotion or what the pattern is more than I don't even care about the physical symptom of it, because I felt every physical symptom there is. And so now I really don't get bothered by that as much. It was more like what's happening underneath. And so what could last 3 weeks to 3 months will last probably 24 hours because I'm really taking time to meet my body where I am. If it needs rest, well, I rest now. I'm not in like, oh, I have to rest, and I used to get scared of fatigue. And I can see why people with chronic fatigue do too, because it's like you shouldn't be tired is everything that, you hear. Or it's even I've had it find it fearful because it meant something maybe was really wrong, or that whole thing about shame. I shouldn't be resting. I should be out pushing through this. Fatigue for me didn't just mean I was tired. If I had just listened to it and rested, there would be no problem. Like remember in, I remember my early 30s, just having kids. I'm like, I am beat. I am when they're resting, I'm taking a nap too. I never had any problem with it. But suddenly with a chronic illness, rest seemed like, you know, uh, oh, I'm doing so much self care when really it's taking care of the symptom that was there. So I've just kind of really looked at related to things in a whole new way. Fear, my symptoms, anxiety, just kind of looking at them and having more of a lighthearted look at things, not being so black and white. I used to think everything was high stakes. And I mean, like everything. If I didn't have the correct, lunch for my right kid, and I just didn't really roll with punches or ride the waves, as John Kabat-Zinn says. I was crushed by a lot of them, but now a lot of that has changed. I'm just so much more, first of all, of course, I'm
Mhm.
the most grateful person in the world that I feel better, but also I just realize so many things don't matter as much, and so my nervous system just really wants to feel safe and balanced. That's my number one priority.
Yeah,
I
that's
love 'em more.
I feel like we don't talk about what it actually looks like to be in recovery. What does recovery, right, look like? That's what I wanted to know because I it's
Okay, I don't
important
know
for
if I
people to see. Oh, no, you did, yeah. No, that was helpful to understand, like, what does that look like now? Some people think when they first I don't know about you, but when I first learned about this work and then I actually got better, I was like, "I'm good. Okay, cool." And then it was in my early days where I didn't really understand everything, and then I got to the point where I had symptoms again, and I'm like, no, what am I doing wrong? Well, I didn't understand the nuance of
yeah,
it and that this is a human experience, but it
it
doesn't
really
mean
is.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
not gonna say that sometimes I try to do everything perfectly. Like, I was following these books the way out, and I'm like, "Okay, this time I'm gonna do this, and this time at 12 to 1." I was like, "But how? I'm doing everything perfectly." And, perfectionist tendency or high achieving was coming out.
Mhm.
I put pressure on myself, especially when I really wanted to go to something like a trip I had planned or a wedding or something. And, I'm like, I gotta be better by this time or, my birthday or this next year for the Christmas, like, because it was so long, I kept looking
Mhm.
for different dates. And every time that date came and I wasn't where I wanted to be, oh my gosh, the suffering that went along with it. So I tried to say, how about if I meet myself where I am and I just am so happy with the little steps that are happening? Can I, it's not easy, let go of outcomes a little bit, just try and be happy with this progress that I'm making, and people relate that to like the game of shoots and ladders. You might be going up that ladder and then suddenly, no. But even if you go all the way back to, square two, it doesn't mean you've lost the game. It just means that you can keep going. And I think consistency and practice, it doesn't matter when. Sometimes creating neural pathways for me just meant taking a breath or stopping when I was walking to let my heart settle. It wasn't a major practice that I was doing. It was just kind of more mindfulness, like, can I just stay in this present moment and not let myself go drift into the past or worry so much about the future? It was coming back to what I can really have And then choice too. I realized I had a choice of what I was even letting my mind entertain. And if I was going to go, and all these thoughts are coming in of negativity, or I'd see a study and I'd be like, oh no, long COVID study, which everyone kept wanting to send me. And half of them were like 40 people in it, such small studies, or they weren't conclusive. But in my mind, with my amygdala that was like looking for, so hypersensitive to news, when I'd realize that, I would be like, wait a minute, first of all, I might not be in that population. It's a very new study. So I really had to re-talk to my brain and really soothe it and say, this doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep getting better.
Yeah.
And then I kept watching recovery stories like yours and, and Raylan's, and say, like, I see people getting better. Why can't that be me? At first I started watching them and I was so mad at everyone. I was like, well, goodness gracious. And then I started copying the things like Jackie Baxter. I remember I'm like, I'm going to cold plunge because she cold plunged up in wherever the heck she is, Scotland, and other people. But that didn't even work for me because that was their own path. It's really individualized by what your nervous system wants, what feels good for it, what makes it feel safe, and then doing it, consistently. And all these little things that we're doing, that is going in a new direction. So I thought it had to be something formal, but it actually doesn't. Anything that made me feel a little safer, helped. I had really bad MCAS, and
Yeah.
went to get that checked, and, did the histamine diet, did the big one blockers or whatever they're called. This really,
Mhm.
but my wasn't tolerant to the medicine. So it made me feel worse. And,
Mm.
finally it was like a combination, I could think of a few things that helped, but it was mind body too. I literally would look at a food and try and, do some diaphragmatic breathing and say, this is going to be safe stomach. This is going to be safe, because I never had any of these. I mean, it would be like an apple and all of a sudden I'm breaking out, and having some hard time breathing. So it was like, I knew that this could not be, I couldn't suddenly be allergic to, or, maybe you can, but I knew it was a hyper response. And I
Mhm.
knew that, yeah, that all the other things that were hyper responses, I was able to, really calm down by doing the breathing and by talking to my brain and saying, an apple isn't unsafe. So then I would just take the littlest bite. And actually, even before I do that, I probably visualize myself eating it with no problems at all and just
Mhm.
being like really enjoying it. Like, oh my God, apples are so good. And then taking that tiny little bite, waiting 12 hours, to see. And, that was that a corrective experience. Every time I didn't get a hive or anything, I was like, yes, way to go, body. And I did that very slightly to include foods back. And so, we're a little more successful than others because I think fear would creep in. I had a little, hypervigilance going, like checking everywhere for hives or something. But on the whole, when I started to get more confident with it, that was a way out of MCAS for me.
I wanted to hear that because MCAS is confusing for people sometimes, right? And there's a lot of like identity built up around I have MCAS and this is real and this is true. And yes, 100% it's real, right? And also,
Yes.
yes, it's mind body and especially food sensitivities I talk a lot about on here. So people know that it's mind body, but it's helpful to hear, right? That that was your process and that's how you can help yourself.
Yeah,
But
I
what
mean,
I
I'd
was,
never heard that before, so it was just so interesting and fearful. I mean, I knew it was all fear. Like, I was starting to fear everything, fear every food everywhere, and then
yep.
being mad that everyone can eat what they want, and I'm just like, "Okay, I can eat 3 safe foods," But then I realized even this word "safe food," I'm like, okay, when I started to read more about mind body, I'm like, "Why am I saying that's safe, but that's everything else is danger?" And so that was my first clue that maybe that was neuroplastic because I wouldn't be putting them in different categories, same with my symptoms. So I was like, let me just try this. And, because when you go to the mast cell activation doctors and they talk about that, it can seem pretty permanent, very structural, and I was sure that COVID gave me, now MCAS along with the, other myriad of symptoms that were happening. So I just, I didn't know that it could be, but you're right. I love the way you're bringing this to people's attention that even something that's, and the same with POTS. I mean, POTS, I was told like, you're not gonna, be able to get, through that except for, maintenance. I don't have any of that anymore. And so
Mhm.
my biggest thing that I just want to tell people is every single one of the symptoms, whether it was the small fiber neuropathy, damaged endothelial cells, dysfunctional mitochondria, migraines, even all of those have been never thought that was going to be possible.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That is so huge. They're big diagnoses, syndromes, terms, right? Long COVID, MCAS, POTS. They're scary. They can be really big. And also bringing it back to the micro moments shifting your state of being, your mindset, your body, your awareness over and over and over again. That's what creates that safety, which eliminates the symptoms. So your story is a wonderful story to really hone in on like, yeah, these were very real in your body and you don't experience them anymore.
Yeah, and Grace, if I can just say one more thing, it's just that
Yeah,
I see why people are in the medical system. I was too for a very long
totally.
time. And this is 2021. And now we're in 2026. And I just want to say that this is growing this mind body field. So instead of
Mhm.
having a year and a half that, that you go to these places and you get shuffled around, if you're not finding anybody out there who's listening, if you're not getting an improvement from the medical system, please pick up The Way Out by Alan Gordon or Unlearn Your Pain by Howard Schubiner or contact somebody like you who has been through this and just see, or, Raylan's channel, just see that because you had nothing to lose. There's no side effects to this mind body work. No, if anything, you can feel a little bit more, for me, it went universal into a lot of the different things I used to be fearful of. I'm not fearful of flying anymore. I'm not fearful of the dentist. So it's
Mhm.
really helped in so many ways for me. But so I can't see any downside to trying it, except that you might possibly, if you can open and expand your mind to it. Sounds weird because there isn't a doctor sometimes involved. Sometimes there is. There's so many doctors in this field. You've interviewed them. I've interviewed them, and they used to be fully, into just the medical, and now they've gone, mind body as well. And now they're helping so many people that didn't used to be able to help. But if you can expand your mind a little bit to this, you can get better and maybe in a shorter term.
Exactly. It's growing so fast now. And it's wonderful because we're all doing the amazing work of putting the information out there and helping people understand it, dipping your toes in. Earlier this morning, I was just talking about how this work is not going to hurt you. It will only help you in so many ways you didn't even realize or think about. It will change your mindset, your emotions, your life. It'll just change your perception about yourself in life.
Yeah, I mean, well, for flying, used to just it would be like I would think of a plane and I
Mm,
would think of all the things that could go wrong. And that was just the way my mind worked. And that is that predictive coding. And then I started changing it and I started just working with visualization of when I fly, gosh, I get to go see people that I really care about, or I get to see a land that is brand new. And now if I have a thought about a plane and it's always like something that's really exciting rather than something. And like I didn't really do anything except change how I related to an airplane. And the airplane never changed. It was my perception that changed. What a difference. Now I just look forward to trips, whereas before I would spend weeks. Should I go and then having to take Xanax on the plane? And, now I just sit there on the plane and I'm like getting so excited for what's going to be on the other end. So it's
yeah.
just one little example of how we can change our perception that we're changing, not even, and same with, if you're in this trying to get better, I exercise. Petrified of exercise. I had bad experiences of exercise, that post exertional malaise, which I was told was why the reason for it. And I
Mm,
believed it. It was exactly 24 hours after. So I was like, oh, yeah, I got post exertional malaise. But when I started to relate to it differently, what if I went into this movement, I called it, as like really loose and joyful and, not scared? Well, then I didn't get the post exertional malaise. And why was that? Instead, I would be like, yes, I just did that. I'm so happy. And so it was just, again, and so I found with activity or exercise, it's really not what I do, what I did. It was how I did. If I did it with lightness and ease, but if I started to grip or started to worry, it was time for me to stop because that was only going to lead to telling my brain that I was unsafe and it was going to start the cascade of symptoms.
We do anything is how we do everything. I used to be like, "Oh, it's so annoying to hear. I don't know what to do with that." But it's so true, right? Your perception, the way you respond to anything outside of you, your own body, your own symptoms, that's what we learn in this work. It's how you respond that changes your experience. And that's exactly what you just said. So are you back to being active, being an athlete, being
Yes.
amazing?
Yes, and like I said, if I notice, I just, climbed Mount Rainier, like, a few months ago,
Uh,
with my son, I set all boundaries. "Guys, if I don't feel like I'm gonna make it up to the I'm not gonna make it," and this is, my children, which was a hard conversation to have because 'cause they're like, I would be running the thing, and it was
mhm,
5.5 miles. So it was like, "I just wanna set you up before we go that I'm gonna take it as and I'm gonna stop probably frequently to check in, with how I'm doing." But I kept saying the only thing that could really stop me, I don't have structural problems, is me and my mind. And
mhm,
so because by the way, it had been about, 3 to 6 months that I was slowly getting back into things. I didn't just go from bedbound to climbing that. That was just a slow, 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 and working with a really great PT who helped me expand things in that way where I'm doing it with ease. And they're the ones who's taught me that if I tense up or if I start to say, I wonder if if this is, I'm gonna, what did I used to always say? Oh, I wonder if I'm gonna, this is gonna come back to me tomorrow,
uh,
then it was time to stop. He would actually just say, you go home right now. And because he just wasn't worth it. But I loved that
yeah,
because then it would come back the next day and be, all right, let's do this.
yeah,
And I listened to a lot of great music and stuff. But with the climb, yeah, I just set a few boundaries, took my time, went and yeah, so I can do anything now. I can work full time and I don't really have any restrictions that I can eat anything, and so it was perception changing. And this is how, I use a lot of the MBSR work to keep myself in this, mode. And I really, really, really am aware of when an old pattern will come back, a perfectionist pattern or a striving pattern or a pushing pattern, and just realize that it's just not worth it. I am the happiest tennis player out there. I don't care if I beat anyone anymore. I'm just so happy to be out playing and I'm always looking at the day and the person. I never, I always saw them as like my opponent, my enemy. Now I'm like, what's up? And so it's really changed how I play. I still love to play and do my best, but I
mhm,
don't have this. I have to win, or I'm not, worthy, or I'm not
mhm,
whatever. And I think with sports, it became so competitive that, it felt like life or death when really it was tennis or, some sport that I was doing.
yeah. Yeah. That's huge because you're able to be in it even more now than probably you did. It might look different, but like your engagement, how you experience it, I'm sure the people around you experience you differently.
Oh my gosh. I know some people wouldn't even play with me because I was so
Yeah.
competitive. And I remember my friend would say, either way, after this match, even if we lose, we're going to go to Starbucks. And I'm like, if we lose, we don't deserve Starbucks. And so you still, but now you're right. I go out there, I'm so much present. I don't care about the last time I played. I don't care what the score is, or I used to count games to see, if I would win. And here I am thinking about the future. So of course I'm messing up in the present because I'm all anxious instead of now, watch the ball. Watch, right there, or, have a friendly conversation or enjoy a bird going by, whatever it is. It's changed. And my presence with people, oh my goodness, instead of being on my phone or whatever I'm doing, I'm like, let's just sit and talk for a minute. And, the eye
Yeah.
contact, I limit the screen time because I had to. And now it's so healthy to not do that before I go to bed so I can sleep better. Or first thing in the morning, I don't want to start my nervous system with all the news. And so, yeah, I think I've just become so much more mindful and of things that'll affect me, of what I take in, and of things that now I can actually, project out. So much more compassion for people,
Yeah.
living kind of.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was really powerful. I know it will help a lot of people. Is there anything else you feel important to share that you haven't shared?
Let's see. I guess the surrender moment for me, it
Yeah.
came in this nighttime thing, and who knows if it was a fever that actually caused it
Yeah.
because it was hot as anything. And then also very emotional when that happened, just like
Yeah.
at wit's end, crying and whatever. But I don't think it always has to be so dramatic. I think that sometimes it could just be a curiosity. What
Mhm.
if I could recover? What would that look like? What if I think if it could just start with, if I could, if I could see myself, doing something without these symptoms, what would that be? And some people find that triggering, but really it's all about planting what's possible. And when, the whole neuroscience thing that our brain doesn't know the difference between what we think in the future and what's happening right now. So when you're thinking about seeing yourself, with ease, doing something that you used to love to do, your brain is really telling your body, like, come on, cells, let's go. And your body's like, I think I'm receiving the message that we could be better. So let's start working towards that so that the mind body connection, it's in homeostasis together. So I feel like the mindset and visualization are just so important, as well as some surrender appointment and a point. And that doesn't mean, resignation means accepting where you are and going from there, moving forward, letting other things go, but that, moving ahead, the past is in the past, but
Mhm.
where are you going in the future?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
As mentioned in the beginning of the episode, you have a community where you help people. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, the things that I really wanted when I was sick that I didn't have or didn't even know about, because didn't no one really knew, were community. And that's why I created that, because I just wanted someone who knew what I was talking about and had the
Yeah.
same emotions and the same
Mhm.
feelings. And so I wanted to have that. I wanted to have experts. That's why we had you on and all the different doctors and people that are in this space, because I wanted to know what this was about. And, when reading was really difficult and all the brain fog was so hard, I kind of was getting it, but not really. I mean, that first book, Dr. Sarno's book, was hard to read, very technical. And so I wish I had found maybe the way out, which is, funny and, a little more user friendly then, but still I wanted to know, and it felt like it resonated, but I couldn't quite understand it. So I wanted experts to come in. And that's why we have
Mm.
people that come in to my crew, what my community is called. And then I just wanted to know some practices, some tools that I could do to regulate. And I don't mean to do them perfectly, like we talked about, but just to do when you get a stressor or before a doctor's appointment. So you can even express yourself to the doctors correctly and they won't say anxiety, or something, And so these are the things that I do. These are the things I wanted. And so this is why when I decided I was going to create my own program, plus my skills are in MBSR work, so the breath work is also something, and then the PRT. So I just added all these things, and we meet every day for 30 minutes and do these practices, not perfectly, but just as we are. And then so that people will have like a toolkit of things that they can have when they need them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful community. So thank you for creating it. I agree. I didn't have that when I started this. And actually, my first book was the Mind Body Prescription as well. It's funny. I don't often hear people. Yeah. But that was because none of this had ever come out. I mean, that was for me, I read that in 2015, I think.
Wow.
Oh, there
I
just
was
wasn't
still
any.
underground at that point. I mean,
Exactly.
poor Dr. Sarno, if anyone could ever, if he could see this, what's happening now, in his lifetime, he was kind of, people were just trying to
Hmm.
get, the other doctors like,
Hmm.
no. But look how many
Yeah,
people he helped with back pain.
I
And the
know.
fact that he knew that it was gonna, kind of blow up to other things besides back pain, besides chronic pain, that there were gonna be post-viral syndromes where this also, I mean, the guy was incredible and a genius. I wish I had known him. Like a lot of people, Nicole Sachs, a lot of people got to, meet him, but we didn't. But I certainly am so appreciative of his
Mhm.
wisdom. And one thing I just left out is that the joy. That's all. Is that getting, one thing, the last day of my program, Feel Good Friday, is when we actually don't even talk about anything about our symptoms. We meet with somebody one on one, have recover buddies, but we have a funny, like a would you ever type talk, or, would you rather be on planet, whatever, Neptune or
Yeah.
C. And then we just and do laughter yoga, and we just do things that boost our connection with each other and boost our moods, so that because in doing that, we boost our immune system, we send all that oxytocin around, and I just feel like joy and those that feel better feeling is so helpful to recover.
Love that. Yes, we forget to add that up. That's the bucket we've got to fill up. We're not just reducing all the negative things or the symptoms that don't feel good, the negative mindset. I don't even really like to say the word negative. It's just beliefs that have been built up as protective mechanisms, right? But like we've got to build up that positive, that joy, that connection, gratitude. That's so, so important. So I love that.
Yeah, and it seems like when you're sick, it's the first thing that goes out the door, and so bringing
Yeah.
that back and
Yeah.
noticing that, yeah, you can be with uncomfortable feelings, sensations, emotions, and you can also smile at something that's precious.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, Ellen. Again, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very powerful and I know this will be a good one that people will learn from. So, appreciate it.
Thank you, and look, I always like, "Oh, I hope our paths cross again," and they did, so I'm so grateful, for you too for having me on today and for your work that you do, and you're hilarious. Your content is just so authentic and real, and I love it, so I keep telling everyone to go to Heal with Grace because, I don't know, even days where I was just like, and I'd go and I'd see your things and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, she is just doing it," and you're being so real about, the whole process of this, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. So, yeah. Okay. Well, I know we will talk soon and for all of my listeners, I will talk with you next week.